Hi guys, you're welcome to another tutorial on Sew with Abby channel. My name is Abigail. If this is your first time of coming across this channel, thank you for stopping by. Please do not leave without subscribing, and if you are a returning subscriber, thank you for coming back. In today's video, I'll be sharing how to cut and sew this cargo shirt. This shirt is simple to make. If this is what you like to learn, then keep watching. Let's get into the video. For this tutorial, these are the materials I'll be working with, and for my fabric I have chinos fabric here, which is one trouser equivalent to 45 inches. I'll be drafting on this paper before I cut on my fabric, and you can actually draft directly on your fabric, and I'll be drafting the front pattern first. Now I'll draw a straight line, which is the starting or the shoulder line, and from the edge here I'll measure 2.5 inches, which will be for the button allowance. You know, we are working on a shirt. I'll measure the 2.5 inches all the way to the end of the paper. Then connect the points together. I will label this part the button allowance. Then fold it in before I continue taking my measurements. Now I will proceed to take the vertical measurements, and the first one I'll take is my bust point, which is 9.5 inches. Then the length of this top. The length I want this top to be is 21 inches, but I have 18 inches here, so I'll add the extra inches plus M allowance when cutting on my fabric. The next thing I want to do is to take the neck measurement. The width is 2.5 inches and the depth is 2.5 inches as well. Then I'll use my French cuff to connect the point like so. Next, I'll take my shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 15 inches. Divided by 2 is 7.5 plus half-inch stitching allowance, making it 8 inches. And from there, I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope. Then I'll draw a slant line towards the neck area. Next, I'll take my armhole depth. To get your armhole depth, you divide your bust circumference by 6, then you add 1.5 inches to it. I will connect the point with a straight line, then draw an horizontal line here. Then I'll go ahead to label the lines. This is the chest line, the bust line, and this is the length. The next thing to do is to get my armhole curve. To get your armhole curve, you divide your bust circumference into 4. Then come to the armhole line, get the midpoint, mark it, and from that mark you go in by ½ inch. Then connect the 3 points together with your free hand or your French cuff. And here we have our armhole. Now I want to take my round measurement. I already measured my bust circumference, and I'll go to the hem line and measure the same thing I have for my bust there. Next, I'll add allowance. I will be adding 2 inches for the allowance, 1 inch as is allowance and the other 1 inch as seam allowance. I will add the same thing at the hem line, then connect the points together with a straight line. Now you can decide to leave the side of your shirt as it is, or you can just shape it a little. For me, I'll be shaping it a little, so I'll go in by ½ inch. Alright guys, next thing I want to do is to work on the shoulder. So from the shoulder slope, I'll come down by 1 inch, and I'll mark the 1 inch towards the armhole area. Then connect the points together, and now we have a new shoulder. The 1 inch I deducted from this front pattern, I'll return it when drafting the back pattern. And this is all for the drafting of this front piece. I'll go ahead now to cut it out. I will extend the armhole here and continue cutting. Now that I'm done cutting, I'll label this as front and go ahead to bring in the pattern paper for the back. Before I draw the starting line, I'll come down by 2 inches, then draw a line across as my starting line and start taking my measurement, the first being the neck width, which is 2.5 inches like the front, but the depth is 1 inch. Next, I'll take my shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus ½ inch stitching allowance. From there, I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope. Before I measure my armhole depth, I'll take the length, the 18 inches I marked in front, then draw a straight line across. Now I will measure my armhole depth using the same measurements I used for the front. Then draw a straight line to connect to the shoulder slope and an horizontal line as well. Now I want to get the armhole curve. I'll divide my bust circumference by 4, and here I don't have to get the midpoint of the armhole line or go in by ½ inch like I did the front. Afterwards, I'll add the 2 inches stitching allowance, and the same thing I have for the bust, I'll measure at the hem line. Then connect the point. I will also go in by ½ inch like I did the front. And afterwards, I'll extend the armhole curve. Remember the 1 inch we took from the front pattern? Now I want to replace it. From the shoulder, I'll go up by 1 inch and I'll mark it all the way to the armhole side. Then connect the points together. I will extend the armhole line and also the neckline. And this is all for the drafting of the back pattern. I'll go ahead now to cut it out. I will label this as back, then bring in the front piece to show us how the back will be on it. So the back 1 inch will overlap on the front like so. The next thing to do is to draft my sleeve. I'll go ahead now to bring in the pattern paper for it. This is what I'll be using, and the first thing I'll do is to draw a starting line at the top and then measure the length. The length is 8 inches. I'll measure the same thing here, then connect the points together. Afterwards, I'll come to the top to take my armhole measurement. Then I'll add ½ inch to it. That is exactly what I have there, so I don't need to mark anything. And from there, I'll come down by 4 inches. Then I'll come back to the top and then divide what I have there into 2. And from that mark, I'll come down by half of what I measured here, which is 2 inches. The next thing to do is to create a curve by connecting the points together. Now I will come to the hem of the sleeve to measure the round arm divided by 2. Make sure that when you measure, you're not measuring it fitted, okay? Then I'll draw my line like so. Alright guys, I'm done drafting the sleeve and I'm going to cut it out. I will go ahead to label it as sleeve. And now I'm done drafting the pattern for our shirt. The next thing I want to do now is to go ahead and cut out all of this pattern on my fabric. Alright guys, I'm done cutting my fabric and I will explain how I did it. For the back, I didn't add anything to the neck, but I added ½ inch to the shoulder, nothing at the armhole. Then at the side, I decided to add extra ½ inch, although I added my allowance already, but I just decided to add this ½ inch. Now for the length, I added extra 4 inches to it. Remember I said the length I want to use is 21 inches and I measured 18 inches on my pattern paper already. So 3 inches to add up for the length and 1 inch for the hem allowance, and I did the same thing for the front as well. And for my sleeve I added half inch here, 1.5 inches at the side and 2 inches at the hem. The next thing I want to do is to start stitching. I'll take out this pattern paper, but before then I need to notch the button allowance. I'll notch it at the top here and I'll do the same at the hem. The first thing I'll do to these front pieces is to fold in the button allowance. So I'll fold in the button allowance twice and the fold will stop where I notched, okay? So after stitching this first piece, I'll do the same thing to the second piece. After I was done stitching, this is what I have. I also gave it a good press. Now the next thing I want to do is to join the shoulder, but first I'll overlap the right side on the left side because that is where the buttonholes will be. After pinning it down, I'll bring in my back piece, place it on each other right side facing, head over to the sewing machine to stitch using 1/2 inch measurements. Alright guys, I'm done joining the shoulder and this is what I have. You can see that the hem is not equal, so I'll pull the front piece so that the 1 inch from the back comes down to the front. So guys, you can see that the 1 inch is already at the front. Then I'll just make notches on the shoulder. The next thing I want to do now is to measure around the neckline because I want to cut my collar. So I'll measure around the neckline to know how many inches I have there. Alright guys, I have 17.5 inches there, so I'll set this aside to bring in my collar. I will be drafting my collar here before I cut on my fabric. So the first thing I did was to draw a straight line at the hem. Then I will measure half of what I got at the neckline. You know, I got 17.5 inches. So half of it is what I marked here. And from that mark, I'll go up by 1 inch. And at the center fold, I'll measure the 1 inch as well. And then connect the points with a straight line. I'll connect the point here as well. Now from the point here, I'll go in by 1 inch. And from that 1 inch mark, I'll go up by 2.5 inches. Connect the point with a straight line. From the point here, I'll go out by 1/2 inch. Then draw a slant line. From the 1 inch mark at the center fold, I'll go up by 2 inches. Then connect the points together. Afterwards, I'll slant the tip of the collar like so. And this is all for the drafting of the collar. I'll go ahead to cut it out. The next thing to do is to place this on my fabric to cut it out. Okay, I'm done cutting and I added stitching allowance on all the sides and I cut out 2 pieces for this collar. If you are using a soft fabric, I will advise you iron interfacing to one of the sides of the collar. Now I'll head over to my sewing machine to stitch, and this is how I'm going to stitch it. After stitching, this is what I have. I will notch the edges and corners and trim off any excess. Go ahead and do the same thing, and when notching, be careful not to cut through your stitches, okay? Afterwards, I'll turn it right out, and after turning it right out, I will give it a good press. The next thing to do now is to attach the collar to my shirt. I'll notch the center back of the neckline and I will notch the center back of the collar as well. Now I can attach it together. I'll make sure the notch part of the collar and the shirt aligns right side facing, then I'll pin it all round. And this is how I'll be stitching it with 1/2 inch measurement. So guys, I'm done attaching the collar to my shirt and this is what it looks like. The next thing I want to do is to use this other part to cover up the stitch. So I'll head over to the sewing machine and run a stitch on it like so. After using the other part of the collar to cover up the stitch, this is what it looks like, and you can see that it gave it a neat finishing. The next thing I want to do now is to work on the sleeve. So I'll set this aside and bring in my sleeve. For the sleeve, the first thing I'll do is to fold in the hem allowance. I'll head over to the sewing machine to do that. I'll fold it in twice, then run a stitch on it. After stitching the first one, I'll stitch the second one as well. After folding in the hem allowance and running a stitch on it, this is what I have. Before I attach the sleeve, I'll notch the center. So guys, this is the armhole of my shirt. I'll bring in my sleeve, making sure the notch part touches the notch part on the shirt, and I'll stitch it all round the armhole. And I'll stitch with 1/2 inch measurement. After stitching this sleeve, I'll stitch the other sleeve as well. This is what the sleeves look like after attaching it to my shirt. The next thing I want to do is to work on the pocket, so I will set this aside. And this is the pieces I'll be making use of. The length is 8 inches and the width is 8 inches as well. Now what I want to do first is to fold in the edges, then use an iron to press it down such that the length is 7 inches and the width is 5 inches. I'll go ahead now to do that and come back to show us what it looks like. Alright guys, after I was done folding it in, this is what it looks like. Now the length is 7 inches just like I said, and the width is 5 inches. The next thing to do is to attach it on my shirt. Now from the top here, I'll measure 8.5 inches. Then measure 2 inches from the beginning of the button allowance. Next thing, I'll bring in my pocket and place it on the line. Then pin it down. Afterwards, I'll measure the same thing on the other side and pin down the pocket there. I will go ahead now to stitch it all around. Now do the same thing to the other side, but I won't be stitching this part because it is the pocket opening. Alright guys, I'm done stitching my pocket, and the next thing I want to do is to work on the pocket cover. Now this is the ring, this is the strap, and this is the cover. I've gone ahead to stitch one of the pocket covers, and I'll be using the other one to show us how I stitch it. For the strap, the length is 11 inches after stitching, while the width is 1 inch after stitching. The pocket cover is 5 by 2 inches after stitching, but the actual measurement is the width of the pocket plus 1 inch for stitching, which is 6 inches, while the length is 2.5 inches. For the pocket cover that I already stitched, there's an opening in which the strap will go through, and I'll be showing us how I did it with this second pocket cover. The first thing to do is to get the center and notch it. At the top here, I will also mark the center, then mark the width we need, which is 5 inches. I will mark the length as well, 2 inches. Now to get the opening, I will come to the center here and mark ½ inch on both sides, making it 1 inch because the width of the strap is 1 inch as well. And this is how I will stitch. When I get to the mark, I'll back stitch, then leave the 1 inch space, back stitch again and continue stitching. Now the next thing I want to do is to pass the strap through the ring. So I'll pick one of the strap and insert it into the ring like so, and the amount that will be on this other side is 1.5 inches. I will go ahead now to stitch, and after stitching this, I'll stitch the second strap the same way. Okay guys, I'm done stitching and this is what I have. I also stitched the second pocket cover, and the next thing I want to do is to insert this strap into the opening. So I'll pull down the ring and insert the strap like so. About ½ inch or 1 inch will be inside. I will head over to the sewing machine to top stitch from this point to this point. After top stitching, this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to place it on each of the pockets, then pin it down. I will go ahead now to run a stitch on each of the pocket cover like so. Okay guys, after stitching, this is what it looks like, and the next thing I want to do is to close the side. I'll be using 1 inch measurement to close it. And after closing the two sides, I'm going to hem the down part with 1 inch allowance I left for it while cutting. Alright guys, I'm done closing up the sides and hemming the down part, and this is what it looks like. The last thing I want to do here is to place the button. There will be one button at the collar here, and from there I'll maintain a space of 2.5 inches. That is the spacing I'm giving each button. You can also make use of 3 inches spacing. It all depends on what you want. And with that, we've come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching guys. I hope you find this tutorial helpful. Kindly give this video a thumbs up, and if you are yet to subscribe to this channel, kindly subscribe and turn on post notification for more videos. See you in my next one.